Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Okay, happy 2026. This is going to be an interesting one. First of all, if you're new to the show, welcome. I have a feeling there's a few more listeners since the Christmas break, so to speak. Certainly given a few of my Substack articles as of late, which I'll get into here in a little bit, but welcome if you're new. I've been doing this since October of 2020, and I do this 3 days a week. So the episodes of American Education FM air on my BitChute and Rumble channel on Sunday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night. And then at 6 in the morning on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that's when it hits all the other podcasting streams. So again, if you're interested in listening, welcome aboard and hang on tight. Okay. First of all, let me make mention of this real quick. I don't think Casey Putsch is going to be on the show. It's quite possible, again, that when he made the announcement that he was interested in talking with podcasters or anybody else, that, they do what they do. They receive invitations like he received from me, and then they say, yeah, we're interested, and then they do a little digging on you and your social media and posts that you make, and then they say, nah, he's probably a little too controversial for us, so let's not do it. It's quite possible that he and his team made that decision. I think that's unfortunate. It's fine, I guess, but either way, I'm still voting for him. Vivek Ramaswamy is being destroyed in the comments section of every single X post that he makes, which is great. That's excellent news. I think people are figuring out that Vivek is a fraud. Again, I'll get into the Somali fraud stuff a little bit later because there's a lot to that. But yeah, at least Vivek is being outed on a day in and day out basis, which is good. In fact, they're making memes about Vivek Ramaswamy. They're even making memes about the comments section regarding Vivek Ramaswamy's X page, which again is absolutely hilarious. So he's not getting away with anything, which is kind of nice. So either way, no hard feelings toward Casey Putsch. He has an open invitation if he wants to come on the show. I, of course, wanted to talk to him about taxation in Ohio, which is a huge problem. Same thing with the education system, which is a deep state playground, as everybody is pretty much well aware of. And yeah, a number of other things that are Ohio related. So, with that said, let me start here. It's worth keeping in mind that everything that we are seeing on TV is not the full story. And as long as everybody continues to understand that, and certainly learn that, then you're going to be well off, and certainly more well off, I think, on a knowledge basis, as opposed to those that are just tuning into Fox News and drinking in all of that garbage. Same thing with CNN and the rest of them. Because again, none of them are telling the full truth, and none of them are telling the full story. It doesn't matter the subject. It doesn't matter the country, the geopolitical event, the medical event, an education story, whatever. None of it is legit. So let me start here with this particular post that was on greatawakening.win before the break, and I think it ties in nicely, certainly, to a lot of the things that are happening right now, which again, I'll also get into, certainly when it comes to Venezuela and a number of other things. There was a post here again that was titled, "We won this war the day Hillary lost. The rest is aftermath." And here's what they said, quote, "The 2016 election was the inflection point of modern U.S. power. It marked both the attempted digital coup by entrenched networks and its instantaneous collapse. Hillary Clinton's defeat wasn't a close call. It was a kill shot. Everything since has been aftermath. Exposure management, psychological conditioning, and institutional dismantling under control." Then they, again, basically have little subchapters here. The first one is historical context. Clinton's network had built a near-total institutional lattice through the following bullet points: strategic appointments spanning administrations, deep fusion and intelligence community assets. That's important to keep in mind, certainly when it comes to Venezuela. Full-spectrum media influence, corporate and foreign entanglements, Clinton Foundation as cash movement and influence channel. Victory in 2016 would have sealed the architecture. Trump's win shattered it at the final locking moment. The next one says the counter coup. Trump didn't just win, he overrode the kill switch through digital insurgency, shattered narrative monopolies, crashed polling-based psychological control, disrupted algorithmic forecasts, broke the synchronization of media, data, and institutional development. The result was binary. The coup failed, the counter-coup was deployed. Then it says strategy, art of war principles, appear weak when you are strong. Post-2016 chaos wasn't disarray, it was cover. Investigations, media warfare, lawfare equals camouflage. Allowed operations to proceed without mass resistance, denied the enemy clarity about their defeat. And then it says game theory applied. Keep the enemy thinking they can still win. Prevent desperation-induced system flips. Let them invest in dead strategies like midterms, lawsuits, protests, etc. Meanwhile, execute the long game without triggering panic. Then it says, the show, quote-unquote, don't tell axiom. Q made the doctrine explicit, quote, you can't tell the people, you must show them, unquote. 2016 prevented the coup. 2020 through 2024 showed the public what the coup would have looked like. Censorship, medical tyranny, weaponized justice, open borders, globalist capture. No one could have believed it if told. They had to live it to process it. And then it says the drip, drip, flood mechanism. Q's info strategy was never rhetorical. It was cognitive warfare. Drip, fragmented truths, plausible deniability. Drip, narrative decay, pattern exposure, and then flood, when denial becomes untenable and truth auto-installs. The info wasn't meant to convince. It was meant to outlast resistance. And then it says the real bottleneck, human psychology. The limiting factor isn't intel, it's belief collapse tolerance. Identify fracturing truths, trigger real psychological pain. Resistance is neurological, not logical. Timelines must match public capacity, not military capability. Move too fast equals panic and revolt. Move too slow equals despair and apathy. Move just right equals mass awakening without system collapse. It then says evidence of post-victory operations. Number 1, deep planning horizon. Project 2025 initiated during first term, National Guard logistics planned years out, Titles 10, 32 understood and activated as legal architecture. And it says number 2, current 2025 deployments, 2,000 National Guard in multiple cities, DC, LA, Chicago, Portland, Memphis. Courts extending authorizations into February of 2026, additional cities named, New York, San Francisco, New Orleans, Baltimore, Oakland, St. Louis. Multiple state ops imply pre-planned interlock, not reactive force. For example, the Somali stuff. Number 3, operational behavior. Strategic tempo is methodical, not responsive. Timelines stretch into 2026 and beyond. Permanent structures being built, not temporary war rooms. Confidence implies secure authority, not uncertainty. And then number 4, enemy behavior. Frenzied, transparent, self-destructive. We're certainly seeing that. Exposure of buried networks, operational overlaps, signaling awareness of defeat but too entangled to surrender. Then it says the nervous patriot phenomenon. Divide visible in public forums. Those who grasp the timeline are calm. Those who think the war is still active are agitated. And then it says misinterpretation. They think this is a delayed victory. In truth, this is post-war governance disguised as struggle. And then it says conclusion. The war was won November 8th, 2016. Since then, the captured system has been quietly dismantled. The public has been guided, not told through exposure. Social fabric is held intact by psychological pacing. And the illusion of resistance keeps the defeated opposition from detonating the board. Every chaotic event since 2016 has served a role to delay recognition until the population is stable enough to process it. The enemy isn't just defeated, they've been kept busy with shadows while the foundation was pulled out beneath them. The outcome was decided in 2016. What remains is execution. Unquote. Okay. I tend to agree with this. We've been watching military planning take place for quite some time. Again, when did this all kick off? How many decades ago did this kick off? That's really anybody's guess, and that's been up to interpretation and debate for, again, a very long time. Was it JFK's assassination? Was it 9/11? Was it something in between? Was it something before JFK's assassination? Was it 1913? I mean, who's to say? But either way, what's been going on here is certainly coordinated and it's certainly strategic. And it's not accidental. Again, this dripping out of information and the revealing of the depth of the fraud and the corruption and the control that has existed, not just within our country, but of course foreign countries. And you can see how quickly all of this changes and how fast these stories, again, essentially manipulate the entire zeitgeist and the way that everybody ends up posting online and the things that they talk about and everything else. All of it, again, is coordinated in such a way that you can move the media and the mainstream, again, fake news media, you can move them in any direction you want. They can move the Overton window as fast or as slow as they need to. And then, of course, all of the predictable panic that comes out from those who are engaging in the illegality it's beyond predictable. So let me give, again, just a few more examples here. First of all, the Minnesota fraud shouldn't surprise anybody. But the thing to keep in mind is that Nick Shirley isn't the one who figured this out. He's just the front man. He's just the guy who's been given information and told where to go, told what to put his microphone in front of, put his camera in front of, and all of this. I mean, again, this isn't coming from even mainstream local news media in Minnesota or even Ohio or all the other places where this is being exposed and this level of fraud is being exposed. This is coming from somewhere else. It's either coming from military intelligence or it's coming from, again, white hats that are located within these states who know that this has been going on for quite some time, and now is the time to bring all of this up and to bring this to the forefront so that people can see it. Now, of course, the problem is that the fraud is deeper than what a YouTuber is even showing. State departments of education are directly aligned with all of those daycare centers by helping them have licenses. Again, this is one of the reasons why the state departments of education have also taken over the title of workforce, specifically in Ohio. It's the Department of Education and Workforce, or sometimes Department of Education, Labor and Workforce. That means, again, that State Department is fraudulent, that the people working within and allowing these so-called learning centers, now famously, of course, misspelled, but even so, all of these particular centers receive state approval through these departments. So yes, the department itself is fraudulent, and the department itself is a criminal enterprise, but that's because the people within the departments are engaging in serious levels of illegality. The fraud, again, is deeper than what anybody can possibly imagine. It's always way worse than what we are presented, always. And again, the story that we are presented as revealing and interesting as it is, it's just far, far worse. Now, again, as all of that information was coming out, of course, everybody was reacting in stereotypical fashion. And then, of course, they immediately turned their focus on their own states, and they're looking around within their own states. And they're saying, okay, well, it's pretty obvious that this is happening in our state, and this is what's going on in XYZ. I made a particular post online, certainly on X and Gab, and then I moved it over to greatawakening.win, and I basically said, I find it funny that everybody's upset about Somali fraud regarding fake daycare, yet these same people actively send their children to the largest daycare fraud scandal in American history, American schools. Again, people don't get upset about American education, and that being the largest running fraud scheme that has existed in the history of our country, certainly right next to war and taxation. But this right here, again, is the funny part. Everybody's like, wow, my money's being stolen by Somalis for fake daycare. That's my taxpayer dollars. Your taxpayer dollars are being wasted on your American schooling system, and you're an active participant in it. Again, they want to shut down all these Somali fake daycares, which is a good thing. They should shut them down, and they should send them all to jail. Why don't you just shut down your local school system? How about that? How about you pull your participation away from your school system and watch that entire district collapse? Why doesn't that happen? This again is the hypocrisy of the outrage, because the hypocrisy of the outrage can always be highlighted, and some people don't like that. But it happens every single time. I mean, every single time that a particular story like this comes out, you just want to hold a mirror up to people and say, hey, wait a minute. What about that thing that you keep supporting? Which, of course, they support with their participation by sending their own children. And it's out in the open. It's not even hidden. Your property taxes go to your local education system. And then, of course, you're taxed again if you decide to pass a levy, whether that be more property taxes or income or whatever it is. And again, are Somalis even behind that? Well, of course they are, because fraud is in their DNA. This is why their country sucks. This is why they can't build anything. The only thing that they know how to do is take advantage. They want handouts. They come here, they scream for handouts, they engage in fraud, they take over these particular institutions, they play the race card. If you don't vote for me, you're a racist. It's the Obama syndrome all over again. But they know what they're doing, and they know how to do it. And who taught them? You said Jews, you'd be correct. They didn't learn this on their own. They were taught this fraud. And then they inhabit these departments, which of course allow them to perpetuate the fraud for their own people. And then it just happens time and time again. But again, the fake outrage, and it's not even fake outrage, it's just ignorant outrage that occurs when illegality takes place and people engaging in illegality are arrested and held accountable. There's always, again, this, I don't even know what to call it anymore. It's just these virtue signaling do-gooders, I guess, is one way to put it. And let me give you a quick example. This was over on Substack. This is an Austin Coker, if I'm saying that right, or coacher.substack.com. This guy put out an article that was titled, ICE Descends on Columbus, Ohio. Hits K-12 schools in immigrant neighborhoods. And he's upset about this. He's upset that ICE showed up to do their job. To again crack down on illegals, arrest them, and then, of course, go through some of the schools or hang out around some of the schools because their children who are attending these schools are also illegals. And then again, you see the outrage from all of these people, whether they be law enforcement, the mayor of Columbus, Ohio, whomever. All these other idiots come out of the woodwork and show you who they are. They openly say things like, well, you don't have to comply with ICE, and you don't have to do this, and you don't have to do that. Well, you're obstructing justice, which means these people don't know what real justice even looks like. And these people are everywhere. They're Americans, too. They walk among us, and it's disturbing. Here's a couple of paragraphs from this guy's article. Again, it's embarrassing, but he's clearly a hard left-wing communist. There's no doubt about that. He says, I received a disturbing text message from my sister yesterday afternoon. Quote, ICE has been at the girls' old school today, unquote. The girls, my nieces, used to attend World Language Immersion School in Columbus, Ohio. Sounds like a foreign cesspool to me. Where they both studied French and developed rich relationships with the teachers and students. I'm sure they did. The school is situated in a quiet residential neighborhood where kids often walk after school to the nearby shops in Clintonville to get ice cream or play board games. See how he phrases all of it? He makes it sound like it's some flipping childhood utopia. It doesn't matter how he phrases it. They're illegal aliens there, and they have to go home now. It says ICE broke the peace yesterday. Local parents and community members say that ICE showed up at the school's release time, likely targeting the large Latino Hispanic population the school attracts. So the school's there attracting illegal aliens then. And he, again, doesn't see a problem with this. He goes on and on and on. City officials spoke out about immigration enforcement. Shannon Harding, president of the Columbus City Council, wrote on Facebook that the city is not participating in or helping with ICE enforcement activity, but also said they can't stop them either. Well, good. Then you're basically telling everybody who lives in the area, let alone anybody within earshot, that you're 100% fine with illegality. That's all that they're doing. Again, the Hillary Clinton 2016 post that I read at the top of the show here. This right here is the predictable outrage that always happens from the hypocritical left. Every single time. They're actually supporting the very people that are taking advantage of them. That's a mental illness. Only the mentally ill could be 100% fine having fraud perpetuated on them while they support the people perpetuating the fraud on them. Again, you would think that people would be upset that local media outlets aren't covering these kinds of stories, that they aren't the ones, again, doing the work of a Nick Shirley, for example, which is, again, as I said earlier, he's just running point on the whole thing. He's just the figurehead. He's not actually the one who figured any of that out. But neither did the local media, which, again, you would think would have individuals saying to themselves, well, can't trust the local media for anything because they never highlighted this fraud to begin with ever until now, until after it was brought to their attention. But do you actually think that this was the first time it was brought to their attention? Of course not. They've known about this kind of fraud, again, regardless of where it's taking place, for decades. They're well aware of it. Hell, they invited these people in themselves. They invited in illegal aliens, and now those very illegal aliens are taking advantage of them, like I said earlier, and they're 100% fine with it. And if you catch them, or you, again, hold them accountable and use the law to hold them accountable, well, then they don't like that. How dare you? This should show everybody, again, just how fine everybody seems to be with illegality in our country. It's beyond disgusting, but it's way deeper than what anybody can possibly imagine. I know that's the obvious statement of the century, but it's way worse. So with that aside, but again, still in the exact same vein for the most part, let me get into this business of what the media is trying to show people regarding Venezuela. First of all, there are so many angles to the Venezuelan story and narrative and whatever that there's no way that what the media is showing you is the real truth. That's the thing that everybody has to keep in mind. And I can't help but think about North Korea. North Korea is a prime example of what I'm talking about on this wavelength of thought here. First, all you have to do is remember the way that the media portrayed North Korea. I'm not saying that they were wrong necessarily, but it wasn't the full story. It was far worse than what even they were portraying it as. The media was always using North Korea as basically a perpetual hotspot that has numerous nuclear weapons. They're pointed right at California and Alaska. And if we poke the bear too much, or we go to the demilitarized zone and look through our binoculars at the North Korean border, that somehow a war is going to pop off. Now, what we know for a fact is that had Hillary Clinton had won and the good guys not intervened in that election, there would have been a war with North Korea. something would have happened in the United States, North Korea would have been blamed, and then an attack would have taken place on North Korea. Probably, to some extent. And then, of course, you're in a massive world war because China wouldn't have anything to do with that. And then, of course, they're neck deep in it also, and same thing with South Korea and Japan, and then all hell breaks loose. And God knows who else would get involved. But that was ultimately the plan. And then, of course, that was all disrupted, which means, really, who was controlling North Korea at the time? And the answer is, it was the deep state. And by deep state, I mean CIA, other foreign intelligence agencies, you name it. Kim Jong-un and his dad before him were just figureheads and are just figureheads. But when Trump went over there, he said, I'm in charge of the military. We know what's been going on over there. We know that there's deep state players controlling people over there, controlling, again, all these storylines of there's going to be war and blah, blah, blah. And they do all of that. And then what does it do? It psychologically manipulates everybody in the United States and anybody else throughout the world who picks up on a story like that. Venezuela is the same kind of thing. Saudi Arabia was the exact same kind of thing also. The deep state was there also. They were moving in and around Saudi Arabia and among the king and the prince over there in Saudi Arabia. And then they, of course, were going to kill the prince and the king of Saudi Arabia. And then they were going to, again, take the country over and start a war and do God knows what else. All while child trafficking and drug running and everything else that they were doing. But again, Trump went over there and he changed that. And he fixed it. And they found their deep state players over there, many of which, again, were CIA and other intelligence agencies, and they killed them. No different in Venezuela. There's also no indication that Nicolas Maduro, again, is really the bad guy. He's just the figurehead of all of the stories that are taking place. He's the face that you see while the story's being rolled out. Again, we all remember the entire story during the Obama administration about the famine in Venezuela. That all of the people are being starved, they're having to kill cattle, eat their dogs and cats, eat one another, all of that. I'm not saying that that was fake. I'm simply saying that when the media places blame on a sole individual for that level of corruption or illegality, it's very rare that only one person is behind it. I mean, look at the American people, for example. You can trick the American people into believing just about anything. If you put it on a TV and you give them a hoagie and a beer and whatever else, and they sit down and they watch something, they're going to believe it. They're very gullible, us Americans. We tend to be, which is unfortunate. It's not all of us, clearly, but again, a lot of them are. No different with Venezuelans. You can tell Venezuelans, again, that the Nick Maduro regime was clearly the worst, and he was a murderer. And I mean, you can make up whatever you'd like. And again, I'm not saying that he wasn't. The point that I'm trying to make here is that he was controlled. That he and his wife were controlled because the deep state was there. They were in charge of that entire apparatus. Again, there's a lot of oil there. They have the largest oil reserve in the world. You heard Trump the other day, maybe during that press conference, he said their infrastructure is broken and is limited. Well, who broke it? What is it? Was it the Venezuelan people, or was it their deep state controlling their government and their military, or certain fractions of it, in order to, again, allow everything to take place that's been taking place, like drug running, child trafficking, money laundering? And this should be brought up also, I think, how many American politicians knew about Venezuela? Not only knew about it, but how many of them were actually deeply involved with the deep state that was existing there? Because if you can control a country, then you can control its people. And you can put up any figurehead you want to get people to, whatever, have real or fake outrage toward a particular individual when in fact it's not being run by said individual. I don't think Nicolas Maduro or his wife were actually running that country. I think they were, again, being controlled. I'm not the only one that shares that sentiment. The entire operation itself that Trump and the military engaged in is, I would say, suspicious, to say the least. And suspicious not from a bad standpoint per se, but it's not what the media is portraying. The entire operation lasted something like 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Does that sound like a guy who's, deeply entrenched and really trying to cause a problem? Not to mention he's alive, apparently. I think the photographs of him wearing 6 or 7 different outfits are a bit interesting. I think some of these photographs are artificial intelligence. That's my opinion. I'm not the only one that shares that. They just seem odd to me. So again, the story that the people are being told, regardless of whether they are Americans, Venezuelans, or anybody in the general area, geographically speaking, is not the full story. Now, what we also know, which is rather a historic fact, I think, is that anytime there is so-called regime change, quote unquote, which of course is how the media tends to phrase it, that anytime that this happens, there's always individuals, again, who are going to be attempting to gain power or influence within that particular area, certainly when it comes to its resources. This is also, of course, where the spoon bending takes place. Let me give you some examples. Again, you can pick up on all of these patterns, certainly on social media with different accounts and what people are saying and not saying. You have individuals on one side openly saying things like, they didn't have a central banking system, which is a good thing. There was no Jewish influence there. They outlawed abortion, which is, again, a good thing. Gay marriage was not legal there, which I think is a good thing too, and a number of other things. And they would again say, well, that's because there was no Jewish influence there, because again, that certainly tends to be the kinds of things that they implement in the countries that they seek to control. But at the exact same time, if you bend the spoon in the other direction, their vice president is a staunch Zionist, which again makes a lot of people nervous. But at the exact same time, you had Donald Trump then, again, taking a higher elevation look at things. You had him say the other day during that press conference when he was discussing all of this on January 3rd, he openly said, well, the vice president who's there now is not going to be there much longer because the people don't like her and don't like them, and that's not going to be the case, that they won't be there, that they're not going to be in charge. So again, when people say, well, Donald Trump's doing all of this to, again, steal oil or steal money or implant Zionist Jews there, I would say they've always been there. They just wear a different mask. They just do particular things that don't make it look like they're there when in fact they are there. Now let me give you another example. Again, this is part of the spoon-bending confusion that exists because, again, you get a lot of these posts online that are openly mentioning particular things, some of which are true and some of which are not, but keeping in mind, neither side is telling the full story. So there was a post, again, it's a meme that's making the rounds, and it says, everything they won't tell you about Venezuela. And it's numbered. There's 10 points here. It says, number 1, Venezuela has openly opposed Zionism for over 20 years, calling it for what it is, a fake claim to Jerusalem by greedy bankers to steal the Palestinians, Semitic peoples, identity and homeland for oil and ancient esoteric religious sites sacred to all 3 religions. Yeah, I mean, that's legit. But isn't that also what someone trying to trick somebody would say? I mean, if you're trying to, again, trick people into believing that things are one way when in fact they aren't, you're not really going to tell them the truth. You're just going to implement a few things that make it look like certain people are not really in control when in fact they are. It says number 2, Venezuela has also opposed foreign central bankers from infiltrating their country, politics and monetary banking system, unlike America, with a $38 trillion debt caused by this. Again, it's not that they don't have money, they have it. They were just there controlling the entire infrastructure of the country at the expense of the people who live there, proving that Zionism doesn't care about people. They just care about the resources, hence Gaza and the West Bank and all of that. They're not interested in maintaining life and keeping a better life for people. They're interested in killing people. It goes on here. It says number 3, Venezuela has among the world's largest oil reserves, natural gas, and minerals like gold. This wealth makes it a target for foreign control. Yeah. Because again, it was being controlled, not by Maduro and his wife. It was being controlled by a Zionist deep state, claiming that they weren't Zionists. It's a nice little trick. And people believed it. I mean, they believe it enough, again, to make memes like this. It says number 4, the CIA was created in 1947, Israel in 1948, and Mossad in 1949. That's also true and unfortunate. It says number 5, because of Venezuela's leaders' opposition to being bribed or blackmailed and put on Jeffrey Epstein's list, like all other world leaders, the central banks used the CIA to kidnap Chavez and ran a coup on Venezuela in 2002 that failed but still tanked his economy. They had mainstream media broadcast propaganda saying Venezuelans' people were unhappy and were behind the coup when in fact the CIA hired the people, filmed the revolting. It says number 6, the Rothschilds still have Venezuela as a 9% forever loan, for Citgo oil. And as it turns out, again, there are Jewish influencers and oil tycoons who are, again, going to move into Venezuela and certainly fix the oil apparatus there. But again, to believe at face value that they're just going to steal it for themselves, I think is a bit short-sighted because we're not talking about Iraq here. This isn't Iraq after 9/11. Even Donald Trump has openly said that. Why did we go over there when we didn't even get any of their oil? We didn't even pay ourselves back for the military operation over there, which even he said was completely unnecessary. The point here again is that Venezuela was a deep state hotbed. It was just a deep state playground. It goes on here. It says number 7, in 2007, Chavez exited the IMF to escape more debt traps created by the central banks that siphoned Venezuela's oil revenue. Number 8, it says America sanctioned Venezuela for the Rothschilds for doing this. Again, this was back in 2007. Number 9, Maduro to this day is trying to remain free from the Rothschilds' death grip using America's military, 3-lettered agencies, and presidents that they have on the Epstein list to attack him based on made-up narratives like war on drugs, quote unquote. And then it says number 10, the percentage of U.S.-bound cocaine is only 8% from Venezuela, whereas 74% comes from Colombia and 16% comes from Mexico. Now, even Donald Trump has acknowledged that. Even he said the drugs come from Colombia through Venezuela. And then, of course, he tells the mainstream media and anybody listening that Maduro allows it. Well, it's not that Maduro allows it. It's that he's controlled to allow it. Joe Lang over on X specifically wrote a Substack about a great deal of this, and he's right. And he said the Bush family just shit a brick. He said Venezuela became a narco state under the direction of George H.W. Bush, who installed a leader there many years ago and then sent his son, Jeb Bush, to set up a drug trafficking route, or drug trafficking routes, plural, and money laundering system. Most people have no clue how much Jeb Bush is connected to drug trafficking. And then they have a link to this Substack article describing that. Yeah, it's a deep state playground. Also, of course, and this is the kicker, directly tied to Dominion voting machines. Because if you want to keep your deep state guy, the figurehead, not the person who's really in charge, but the figurehead, if you want to keep him there so you can continue to control him to make it look like he's running things, like Maduro, for example, when in fact he isn't, what do? You have voter fraud. You have everybody vote, and then all of a sudden, everybody magically votes for Nicolas Maduro, when in fact the vast majority of the people don't, but no one's the wiser because you have Dominion voting machines down there. Now Nicolas Maduro is where? He's in U.S. custody, allegedly, without even firing a shot, which means we were already there on the ground, probably protecting him from the deep state people who were already entrenched there. I fully understand that this is confusing, but that's only because people watch their TVs and the news and they just believe everything at face value. They believe the story as it's being told to them. The only thing that I'm saying is that the story as it's being told is never the real story. It just isn't. It's way more complicated. It's way more evil than what the average mind, I think, can pick up. Certainly, again, any kind of a person who's, again, watching television, Fox News, CNN, and just drinking all of that in. But again, you always have the predictable outrage from the less knowledgeable and the full-blown ignorant. You have people, again, protesting, saying that going in and removing Nicolas Maduro, quote unquote, as the story goes, that all of that is illegal. You have Americans, again, left-wing communist Americans, not knowing what they're talking about, protesting the actions of Donald Trump. But that's because they're believing everything at face value. They don't even know that you can control a country and trick people into believing that a person is in control of said country when in fact they aren't. Again, the Bushes were involved there. Barack Obama was involved there. Joe Biden was involved there. Other U.S. politicians knew what was going on there because they too were a part of the deep state, like John McCain. But now the good guys, apparently again, have Nicolas Maduro in custody. Which means, what do you think he's going to do now? Is he going to sit in a cell quietly, do you think? Or is he going to say, thank you for rescuing me from the deep state? I have copious amounts of evidence regarding Dominion voting machines, drug running, other fraud that's been taking place. I know the names, locations of American politicians who were participating in the illegality that was taking place there as well, not to mention you've just destroyed essentially the CIA and Mossad and MI6 and other individuals that were in Venezuela too. And I'm going to give you all of this information on a silver platter, and you can debrief me anytime you'd like. Me personally, I think that's the more logical angle. I think that's what's really going on here. Again, it's not to say that there isn't going to be some jockeying for position, but even Donald Trump said himself that they're going to take control of that country. They're going to have the right people in the right positions at the right time to do the right things there, because that's what needs to take place. Now, again, all the military is there, by and large. We're off the coast. We're right next to Colombia. Colombia is a huge problem. And during this entire time, what's he indicated? He's indicated other countries being, again, deep state hotbeds in the exact same way that he indicated American cities being deep state hotbeds, specifically, again, regarding illegal aliens. When he mentions these cities, like he did in the past regarding ICE raids, he wasn't screwing around. He said, we're going to go into New York, we're going to go into Los Angeles, we're going to go into Chicago, we're going to go into Memphis, we're going to go into these places, Louisiana, or New Orleans rather, and so on and so forth. And he did that. But what countries did he just recently implicate in all of this? Mexico and Cuba. Are those deep state hotbeds? Of course. He's openly said it time and time again that the cartels run Mexico. So why would the deep state not run Mexico? Why would there not be a deep state that also runs Cuba? There would be. Again, if world peace is the goal, you cannot have countries operating as deep state playgrounds that are, again, engaging in untold amounts of illegality that are, of course, negatively impacting not only Americans, but their surrounding countries as well. And yes, we know that Israel, of course, is arguably one of the worst. I mean, the number of attacks that they engaged in 2025 alone is in the tens of thousands. Tens of thousands of bombings they engaged in and attacks that they engaged in the Middle East, whether it be, again, Yemen, Syria, clearly Gaza, a number of places. We know that they ultimately are the problem. But they also happen to be the ones, again, that are perpetuating these deep state playgrounds. They're involved in it as well, because Mossad is involved in it also. So I think that I think their time is going to come. Again, I don't like the face value statements that get made by Donald Trump, like when he had Netanyahu at Mar-a-Lago and he said, whatever the hell he said. He said Netanyahu has helped the Gaza people, that we're helping them, and Israel has helped them too. It's like, I don't know if you've helped them at all. I don't think that's happened, and it certainly doesn't look like help. It looks like genocide, because that's clearly what it is. But even so, at face value, if he says that, then it looks like they're friends. It looks like they're pals. And I've given you my take on that. I think they are furthest from. I don't think Donald Trump likes Netanyahu in the slightest, and I think his time is going to come eventually. But regarding, again, Venezuela, just one last comment here on this. And then I have one more geopolitical thing that I want to mention too, actually a couple, before I slide into education. This is a post by S.G. Anon. Again, he's been inconsistent with some things, but this is an interesting take on again, the Venezuelan narrative. He said the following here, quote, "If you're not paying close attention, you'll miss key details. Maduro isn't against Trump. The two are on the same side. Yes, I know that sounds ridiculous until you zoom out. Maduro had one of the fabled red folders, quote unquote, in the 2019 through 21 timeframe. In fact, he changed that timeframe later on in a post. And he said that that timeframe was the 21-22 timeframe. Either way, he goes on. And he says, these folders have long been believed to be publicly visible confirmations of active red, quote unquote, DEFCON 1 wartime conditions inside related nations. Trump, Putin, Xi, and Kim also had red folders, publicly displayed at different points during the same 2-year time period. Trump's red folder made a dramatic appearance in the public domain on January 6th of 2021. Now add, he said, who set up shop in Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, a half a century ago, and has been using it as a South American secure ops headquarters to coordinate crimes so vast in scope and number it is impossible to describe them properly through a keyboard. The intelligentsia community granddaddied regionally by the CIA, Shin Bet, MI6, and KGB/Cuban Mafia junctions. What has Maduro been doing by posturing as though Venezuela will, quote, take on the U.S. military, frightening and confusing every single paramilitary and or intelligence fraction actor hiding in the shadows of the background control structure they've meticulously crafted in-country by bleeding warlords and political sycophants with ordinary people and throwing enormous sums of money into the fray while reducing international purchasing power for the nation. How do you think Maduro managed to stay alive all those years before he came to power? Don't bite the hand. Did he like living as a second-class citizen inside his own power circle? Did he like living with the knowledge he could be patsied at any time if his usefulness, quote unquote, to the real rulers of Venezuela ran out, who would then loot and sell off what remains of his government's wealth and treasure to the highest black market bidder? Do you think he, Maduro, was unaware of that? In the event the above happened, there would not be a single entity on earth that could avenge him. Now add, do you think his price to then be the Judas goat, quote unquote, for the entrenched deep state power nodes on the ground inside his own country was more or less than 30 pieces of silver? What about, quote, you'll spend time in an American prison, but you'll live, unquote? Can you imagine, if given the chance, how much incriminating material Maduro can bring to the worldwide table regarding rogue U.S. government deep state operations in Venezuela and Saudi Arabia? What about evidence of those rogue groups' extensive involvement activities tying back to the stolen U.S. presidential election from 2020 that we still have yet to fully address. Which, by the way, side note before I continue the post, even Donald Trump told Politico that in a recent interview. He said, don't worry, we have all the evidence of the 2020 election fraud. It happened, and we're going to roll all of that out here rather shortly this year in 2026. So it's certainly coming. But anyway, this post goes on. It says, with that in mind, how well do you think those aforementioned shadow state entities can respond present day to ongoing Venezuelan military and civilian security operations internally as they simultaneously come to grips with reality? Specifically, the reality that if Venezuelan authorities don't catch them before they leave the country, the U.S. military will smite them for the heavens, destroying their hordes and sending any insurance leverage, quote unquote, they might have had to the bottom of the Caribbean Sea or the Pacific Ocean. With their public figure boogeyman, quote unquote, now ostensibly on his way to an American jailhouse, how well do you think their hold on power inside the country will fare? The answer to the above is obvious when we step back and look at things from a high altitude. These people are shameless parasites. They thieve, assassinate, rob, bribe, entrap, kidnap, blackmail, arm twist, subvert, and ransom hostages with the same level of indifference that the ordinary person feels when they order a fast food lunch. They are humanity's enemies, full stop. And Maduro and Trump just liberated Venezuela from their death grip by executing one of the most spectacular coordinated counter-coups ever pulled off in modern warfare, unquote. Again, I tend to agree with that. It's when you see the spoon-bending conversations going back and forth. But look at all the good things Venezuela had. We'll look at all of the bad things that they had. We'll look at this and look at that. If you stop bending the spoon and you look at it from a 40,000-foot view, and you always say to yourself, wait a minute, there's probably something else going on there than what meets the eye, then that's usually the truth. Now, there was also this. This, again, is part of why you can't trust the mainstream media. Around the exact same time as that was all going down, they were starting to show footage from inside Iran. And they were starting to tell people, again, that look at what's happening with the Iranian people. The Iranian people there are rising up, and they're doing this, and they're doing that, and they're standing up against their government, and there's a deep state that exists there too, and so on and so on. Well, as it turns out, it could be that some of that is also fake as well, because a lot of the people apparently are protesting the fact that they don't even have water in Iran. There were 4 stories that landed in late 2025 here, in December of 2025, having to do again with the water crisis that exists in Iran, that they're turning off the water. And that your average citizen, again, doesn't have water to grow food, they don't have water to drink, they don't have water to bathe themselves, flush, they don't have any water whatsoever. But again, if you just watch the mainstream media, you're not necessarily going to get that story. Even though there were outlets like Forbes and even CNN, Real Clear Science, and what's this other one here? Radio Free Europe, for example, that again had as early as December 5th of 2025, Iran turns to water imports as crisis deepens. This is one of the major reasons, again, why individuals are protesting in Iran. Again, who would be behind turning off their water? Who would be behind limiting the resources and the infrastructure that moves water from point A to point B? That would certainly be a deep state problem, without a doubt. Now, let me tie in a couple other things here, I think, again, which are connected to this, certainly geopolitically. There was a story moving around before Christmas having to do, again, with what specifically is being built in the basement of the White House ballroom. Now, I covered that subject a while back because it wasn't something, again, that was widely written about, but it was something that had been discussed online, and there were people discussing it, and they were openly saying, again, that it's going to be a data center. And at the exact same time, it's basically going to be, well, I would phrase it more like a Pentagon, so to speak. Because if you think of the Pentagon, the way that it's operated over God knows how many decades, it's corrupt as all get out too. Even Pete Hegseth has openly said this on the record. He's openly said again that the bureaucratic mess that exists there is arguably far worse than what he could have possibly imagined. Not to mention they fail audits every single time, and I don't think they've ever passed one. So is it possible that what is going to be built in the basement of this particular ballroom attached to the White House is in fact an intelligence data service or data center, so to speak, that is basically going to operate just like the Pentagon? Therefore, you won't need the Pentagon anymore. It's possible. Again, there are a lot of people pointing to it as being sort of an Israeli intelligence data center to some extent. I don't think that's a good thing if that's even true. But who's to say? Again, there just seems to be a pattern here that if the deep state exists within a particular entity, you can remove them, I suppose, one at a time. Or you can create a parallel apparatus, so to speak, that basically accomplishes the exact same thing, thereby no longer needing the thing that was there in the first place that is now beyond corrupt. Again, if you think of the way that the central bank operates and the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Office, well, you have both of them. But you really only need one, don't you? And I think it was Donald Trump, again, in his first term, he basically signed over most of the power over to the Treasury, thereby making the Federal Reserve pretty much useless, which means why even have it? And then, of course, he's openly talking about getting rid of Jerome Powell, and Jerome Powell saying things like, well, you can't get rid of me. Well, again, I think they already did, unbeknownst to Jerome Powell. They've already made the Federal Reserve and that building completely irrelevant. If the Treasury is in control of the money, well, then who's in control of the Treasury? The President of the United States. So, again, I think we're getting rid of the old banking system, and I think Dr. Robin McCutcheon would firmly agree with that, along with endless other individuals, that we're moving away from this central banking system and getting back to something that is more sound. Now, even with that aside for a second, there's just one last thing here, and this, again, kicks back to the Dominion voting machine stuff, and this was glossed over very quickly, which I thought was a bit unfortunate because it seems rather important. Donald Trump signed the National Defense Authorization Act on December 18th, but there's a provision inside of the act, and it says here the following. This is from yournews.com. It says, buried deep within the more than 3,000-page defense bill, Section 6805, requiring penetration testing as part of the testing and certification of voting systems, amends the Help America Vote Act of 2002, to formally require that voting system hardware and software undergo penetration testing conducted by an accredited laboratory as a condition of approval. It says the provision added to the National Defense Authorization Act establishes, quote, required penetration testing for voting systems during certification, decertification, and recertification. It also authorizes coordination with the National Institute of Standards and Technology or other federal agencies on laboratory selection criteria and technical aspects of the testing program. Now, what do you think they're going to find when they test these voting systems? They're going to find holes that look like shotgun blasts in all of these machines, metaphorically. They're going to find out that these machines have been rigged since day one. And this is going to be more evidence that not only the states that were engaging in voter fraud, which, let's face it, it's all of them, for one candidate or another, regardless of the particular party affiliation. But either way, they're going to use that as more evidence to get us back to paper ballots. And once all of this evidence, again, is shown to the public first, then that's going to force the hand of Congress. Then they're not going to have a choice but to go to watermarked paper ballots that are hand counted. That once that happens, then the likelihood of having a more honest election dramatically increases. Again, all of this voter fraud stuff, all these switches are being turned on, and all of these dials are being tuned in to just the right frequency for all of this to happen, certainly within the first half of this year. So again, just to kind of summarize here the geopolitical portion of the show, which I know has taken up at least an hour. You can't believe what is presented to people at face value. There's way more to it. Just because you see footage on television of a particular thing, some kind of a riot or a protest or whatever it may be, and then they put words to it and someone's voice to it that sounds familiar, doesn't mean that that's the thing that's actually happening. And keeping that in mind, again, is exhausting. I mean, it's not easy to consistently remember that, but it is always at play. It's always happening. So don't believe what is being presented at face value. Also, again, don't buy into the spoon bending stuff, that it's this way or it's that way, that it can only be this way or it can only be that way. Nope. The answer is somewhere in the middle and at a much higher elevation, almost always. And again, the war has been won here. Now we're watching the slow, meticulous declass of all of this information, whether it be fraud, voting, deep state corruption, you name it. It's all rolling out here. And everybody's getting, again, different doses of it at different times, but it's all coordinated because it's far too specific and it's far too insidious. It doesn't mean that all the evil people are just going to disappear. It doesn't mean, again, that someone's going to snap their fingers rather, and all the bad people on earth are just going to drop dead and we're going to live in some utopia. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. But there is going to be accountability. And the simple fact, again, that we're seeing it, when the accountability comes later and after the fact, then it's more easily digestible, certainly among normies and people, again, who don't even pay attention to any of this. Yes, there will still be the faux outrage and all of that stuff, but that's predictable because, again, that's what people who engage in illegality do when they've been caught. And certainly if they've not only been caught, but they've been caught voting or supporting that kind of illegality and that kind of fraud, regardless of what it specifically is. So there you go. Okay. I'll leave it at that. Let me move on to this. 2 quick little education stories here. And the second one is very interesting. And this was something, again, that happened as soon as I closed up shop here for the Christmas break with the podcast episodes. And then I got pretty heavy there putting together some Substack articles. But let me introduce it first with this particular story. This was back in December. December 19th. Local Channel 12, Cincinnati, Ohio news outlet. It was titled, "Family Speaks Out After Chilling Death Threats Made Against Tri-State 6th Grader." This is a couple of minutes long. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Well, bullying pushed to its limit in Butler County. The family of a Madison 6th grader is speaking out, saying that other students threatened to, quote, kill him. Local 12's Daniel Zivian joining us now with these really disturbing messages and what the family wants Madison schools to do. Daniel.
Kyle, I spoke with Courtney Sorrell. She says the victim is her nephew. Sorrell says it all started as drama between 12-year-olds. Boy meets girl, boy and girl break up. But interactions with the girl and her friends took a nasty turn.
Her and her friends were targeting my nephew individually at first, just calling, texting, FaceTiming, harassing him to the point he would block one person's number and then they would reach out from another number and they would say disgusting things like how he's hated and he needs to just go kill himself.
Sorrell says it came to a head when the boy was added to a group chat. One member asks, "Can we kill him?" From there, these texts show the makings of a plot. They're also quoted in a report by the Butler County Sheriff's Office. Sorrell lists them.
I have a water tower at the back of my house. I have a wooded area. We could bury his body there. They dropped his address, said we could go to his house and ambush him. I have a gun. I have knives. I have metal bats. We could take them to the school. If anybody asks about the metal bats, just tell them that we use it for sport.
Sorrell says her nephew had to stay home while his tormentors went to class until those kids were suspended for 10 days. Knowing these kids were at school after threatening to bring weapons, the family went to social media. The outcry prompted a response from the district saying in part, quote, "We are aware of social media posts regarding a potential threat toward Madison today. The district is actively addressing the situation and has taken appropriate steps to ensure the safety of our students and employees."
Why don't you call the cops? Why don't you go to the school? And it's like, well, we tried that at the beginning. We didn't want to come to social media. We didn't want this to blow up, but we want the kids to be accountable, that they know that you guys can't make these threats and you guys can't bully someone or say these things and not be held accountable.
Sorrell says all communication with Madison schools had to be initiated by the family and they feel brushed off. She says she hopes the school board investigates the staff's process and transparency, and she hopes her nephew's bullies face greater consequences. Kyle?
All right, Daniel, thank you so much. And the Madison local schools haven't confirmed anything beyond that statement we just told you about there. We did reach out today for comment, but we have not yet heard back.
Yes, that's right. A classic American school tale. A school district with its head completely up its ass. The solution to that issue and that entire problem is so simple, it's stupid. You find the names of all of the girls participating in threatening to kill a student and you expel them permanently. That's it. That's all you have to do. It's not tough. And then you look at everybody in the district, all of the students, and you say, if you threaten to kill somebody and you harass them, you're going to be expelled. Remember that news story that hit the news with all of those people and all of those girls in this school district harassing this boy? Well, they're all expelled now. And that's going to happen to you if you do anything even remotely close to the same thing. The end. And that's it. Fixing the problems of the American school system, again, is so easy it hurts my body. But, much like any deep state apparatus, which the American school system most certainly is, it has to maintain its behavior and the kinds of people who engage in these cover-ups and this downplaying of violent crime and everything else. It has to maintain that, or else the entire system will slip through their fingers and the entire thing will collapse. But again, based on a post I made on social media a while back, on the 31st of December, which I made mention of earlier in this episode, why is it that people keep sending their children to these fraud-ridden environments? Because that's fraud too. A school district on one hand will say the safety and security of our students is our number one concern. And then at the exact same time, they only give a 10-day suspension for these girls for threatening to kill a student while, again, openly harassing him and deciding how they're going to kill him and where they're going to ditch his body. Joking or not. And then what? They don't do anything else. So they're suspended for 10 days, what, during Christmas break? When they come back from New Year's? And then they're right back in the same classrooms as this male student is. Where's the accountability? There is none. This is, again, the problem with the system. This is why they don't expel people the way that they should as quickly as they should. Because if they engaged in that kind of behavior as an adult in a working environment, they'd be fired and arrested. Not in an American school, though. No. It's fine if you do it, slap on the wrist. Maybe we'll have some counseling. Maybe you can get together in a room and apologize and blah, blah, blah. No, you don't do that either. You just get rid of them. You get rid of the trash. Because now, in not getting rid of the trash, what are you doing? You're demoralizing the entire environment. You're showing everybody with your inaction that you really don't give a damn, that the status quo is mediocre at best, and that you're fine with it, that this kind of behavior will be tolerated. Don't worry, everybody will just simmer down and the temperature will drop and all of this will just go away until someone gets killed. Now that brings me, of course, to my most recent Substack article having to do with the Upper Arlington, Ohio board member by the name of Nadia Satiani, if I'm saying her name right. This woman is a monster, in my opinion, and that's putting it mildly. So, to quickly review, again, the timing of this you almost can't even make up. I brought this up on a previous episode of the podcast here, and it was brought to my attention on Gab from individuals in Ohio. And then they were connected with individuals, again, who live in the general area and a number of other things. And I immediately put in an open records request for this woman's emails. Now, this is where it gets funny and sad at the same time and confusing. The initial request that I made was I wanted her emails from July 1st through, I believe it was at the very least November. I wanted all of the emails that were sent to her and all the emails that were sent from this woman. They got back to me after, I want to say, maybe 2 weeks, something like that. And they said, we're in receipt of your request, but your request is far too broad. Well, here's the fun part. And they all do this, by the way. Every American school district does this. They'll instantly cite state law and Ohio Revised Code or whatever state you live in their response when they say that it's too broad. But if you think about it, the request that I'm making is not too broad. I'm asking for the emails sent to a singular individual or any emails that went out from that singular individual within a multi-month period. Again, it's not broad because theoretically she shouldn't be sending nor receiving very many emails as a board member. I mean, board members really shouldn't be on email on a daily basis. I understand that they would receive multiple emails within a week, but whatever. They got back to me and they said, again, like I said, your request is too broad. I said, well, that's fine. Let's just do 2 weeks then. I want all of the emails from this Satiani woman from July 1st through July 14th, which is the dead of summer, which means, again, theoretically, I should get 0 emails back. They emailed me back and they said, that's too broad. And I said, no, it isn't. It's the dead of summer. I should probably get back 0 emails because it's July and she shouldn't be sending nor receiving hardly any emails in a 2-week time span. Not to mention, we can do this, which I told them, we can do this 2 weeks at a time. So I'll do it 2 weeks at a time. I'll make these requests 2 weeks at a time. Every single time that I get back the open records request and however many PDFs you have to send them to me. And I'll do it all the way through the month of November. And we'll go from July 1st all the way through November. They got back to me and they said, that's untenable. We can't do that. Blah, blah, blah. Revise your request. At which point, I then emailed them and I said, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to alert the state AG's office, Attorney General. I'm going to show them all of these emails and you're going to comply. Shortly after, if not the same day, the law firm representing the school district, one of their lawyers got back to me and openly said, we will comply with your request. It's too broad and it's going to take us some time, but blah, 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 and we have to redact things for confidentiality purposes and XYZ. And then it was the Monday, I believe, after Christmas, on it was a Sunday night. It was a Sunday night after Christmas at 6 p.m. They sent me 40 PDFs, which again were not long email exchanges, but there were 40 of them. And some of them were repeats. And the very next day, I went through them rather quickly because, again, they were repeats in many cases, and it was evident as to what I was in possession of. And they ended up, again, being a variety of emails to and from this woman, this board member, who, again, was directly related, allegedly, to the suicide of a student by the name of Carter Adele in Upper Arlington in that school district. And again, to refresh everybody's memory, the way that this apparently went down is she, as a board member, which it's highly odd that she would do this, and it's not her job to do this, and she shouldn't have done it, clearly, for a variety of reasons. But she apparently had some kind of a get-together that she was hosting, and Carter was one of the students attending, and he said that her house or wherever this was taking place, that it smelled like curry. At which point, apparently one of the sons of the board member became offended by that, thought that it was a racist comment. It's not racist. If you walk into a Chinese restaurant and it smells like Chinese food, and you say it smells like Chinese food in here, yeah, it's gonna. So again, only a whack job leftist would see any racism in any of it. But either way, he made the comment, and then she apparently wanted him expelled. He was suspended. They ended up getting him suspended. She was apparently in communication with his middle school that he was attending, and he was being bullied relentlessly. No one was helping him. Crying uncontrollably at football practice the very evening that he killed himself, apparently, with his parents' gun, and that's the end of it. But it's not the end of it. It's just the beginning. What awaits this board member is going to be absolute hell on earth, and everybody should make her life a living hell. Because, again, she was directly involved in trying to get this kid expelled for making a comment at an off-site get-together. And apparently his relentless bullying as well, which led to his suicide. So, again, the request that I got back wasn't even the request that I was requesting, which is the funny part. It was just kind of scattered all over the place. Either way, there are Facebook posts that are within this particular article. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it, because what you're going to see again is the pattern of a complete narcissistic sociopath. This woman, again, works very hard to deflect from her own involvement by claiming that she's there to actually help people. She put together some PDF on grief counseling and how to handle grief and how to handle things like this after the student killed himself, again, in an effort to basically deflect from her own involvement. Let me read one of these Facebook posts real quick, and then there's one other thing I want to read from this, which I didn't have access to before I got this open records request, but once I got it, I ended up with access to it again. Because once people were going after her online, after this all transpired, and after even she was reelected, and again, this student killed himself before she was reelected, so wrap your head around that, and how brainwashed those people up there must be to actually reelect her. She was actively deleting things that she had written on her own website, where she was, again, absolving herself of any wrongdoing, but I'll get to that in a second. One of the Facebook posts here said this: here's some clarification to an earlier post. Nadia reported an incident at Hastings Middle School between two different groups of boys. The administrators conducted an investigation. The administrators concluded the investigation and decided that remediation was appropriate for the two parties. I'm saying her name is Nadia. I don't know if that's how you pronounce her name. Nadia disagreed with the remediation and would not allow it to move forward. She allegedly attempted to use her position on the school board to push the administration to have one party expelled, Carter Adele. One child from one of the parties self-harmed. That was him. The Coffee with Nadia events Nydia had a publicized event scheduled next door to the home of the child. When he took his life, Nydia was asked not to host the event near the family home as the parents were grieving and trying to understand why it happened. She disregarded those requests and showed up on Thursday, October 9th. The father of the child came outside and asked her to leave, and she refused. She instead actually stayed longer than was advertised. It says she's deflected the attention from her by trying to blame the Hastings staff and school administration on the handling of the situation, despite the fact that she was the only party that wanted to exacerbate the situation. She's taken no accountability for her actions, may have been a contributing factor. It says the family of the child has quietly asked that their story be told and that the memory of their son be preserved as a wonderful kid. Untrue rumors of bullying and other untrue possibilities have been traced back to Nydia's rapidly diminishing camp. If you are a Upper Arlington resident and a Nydia supporter, please explain how you justify this behavior. Would your justification be the same if it was your child who was targeted by her? The reason for anonymity is due to the fact that Nydia and her camp have been known to use extreme tactics, including the justice system, to further their narrative and cause. The groups that are most upset with her actions are the young man's teachers, family, and friends. While it would be wonderful to be able to post this to the large discussion forum, two of the moderators that run that forum are involved in her campaign and have forbidden any chatter on this subject, despite the fact that the family and those surrounding the situation are desperate to inform the community. You see how disgusting these people are? There's no accountability. There's no, I was involved, and yeah, I wanted him expelled, and yeah, I was probably behind some of the bullying, and yeah, I was behind this, and I was responsible for that, and so on and so forth. But there's zero accountability. People like her, again, dig in like ticks behaviorally, and they don't change, and they're not going to, and she certainly won't. She's one of these people, again, who will cry kicking and screaming all the way into a courtroom, swearing that she did absolutely nothing wrong, even when the evidence is right in front of her that she was directly involved. Now, there's one other part of this that I wanted to read, which again was, it was interesting because again, it was a portion that she had deleted from her website once people had figured out what she had done, and the internet doesn't forget. And even lawyers for the family, of course, were making open records requests and going after this woman's emails. Not to mention there were other people emailing the board saying that they were pulling their children out permanently from the school district, which is exactly what everybody should be doing. But not everybody's as smart as those parents. So anyway, there was this particular portion that, again, she had on her website that she, of course, deleted, but still exists. She said the following here, quote, "Our community is navigating a period of deep and shared grief. For many, this loss still feels very raw. It is heartbreaking that in this time of pain, politically driven, anonymous rumors are being spread. This speculation is harmful and it refuels the disconnection at the heart of this tragedy. My commitment to upholding a high ethical standard and protecting the privacy and dignity of students has not wavered. I will never discuss the private details of any child." You're a liar. She goes on and says, "And I must be unequivocally clear on one point. The rumor that I would use my board position to influence any student's discipline is categorically false. I did not and I would not. It is not who I am. It goes against my core values and my steadfast commitment to ethical conduct. Furthermore, it is not how our system works. Our superintendent concurs," she wrote. "He has stated that he is aware of no evidence that any board member has attempted to use their position to influence student matters and has urged caution before accepting rumors as true." She sounds like a leftist, doesn't she? This is exactly what they say. She doesn't even hear herself. She went on and said, "Our board president has stated she is, quote, grateful that our board members understand and respect the distinction between our roles as parents and board members, and that these personal roles do not impact or interfere with our district actions and vice versa," unquote. The board has absolutely no role in individual student discipline. That authority rests entirely with our district's administration. It is profoundly disheartening that anyone would exploit a community's grief to smear a local school board race. It is unacceptable, and it's why so many good people do not run for office. My social media commenting guidelines are written specifically to create a safe, respectful, and constructive environment for open conversation. Consistent with it, I will be deleting repeated, misinformed, and harmful comments, as I believe this is the bare minimum needed for our community to heal. Then why do you even have a thread on your website for such a discussion if all you're going to do is delete what you disagree with? Again, the woman is insane. She wrapped up and said, "I will continue to lead with compassion. My focus has been and will remain on building a healthy, resilient culture and serving all the students in our district. Every bear forward. I know this community. We can do hard things, and we will get through this together," unquote. Yeah. She's a psycho. And then she deleted it. She deleted that entire post. So here's what I did. Again, in the comments section, I grouped all of the PDFs in the open records request that I got into one PDF and made it available for anybody to see if they're interested. And there's a link there for people to see that. I also put other links to the Ohio Ethics Commission, because this is an ethics violation. As a board member, she doesn't get to use her position to favor her, her child, or anybody else at the expense of another child, let alone a child's life. And she's violated the Ethics Commission codes of conduct. So every single parent who doesn't like her, who knows, again, that she violated the codes of conduct, should get into the comment section of that article, find those links, call the Ethics Commission. You leave a message, basically. One person will eventually get back to you. You tell them who it is, and they'll either tell you that complaints have already been filed, or if you have other evidence that you would like to submit proving your point against her, then you should submit that information, and that's basically how that goes. But she should not be sitting on that board much longer. Let's see. As one might expect, people in the comments section, again, some of them are from that area, and they were commenting also. A person openly said that this is my community and I'm glad to see this article. You're welcome. Another person said, "I'm a citizen of Upper Arlington, graduated from Upper Arlington High School in '92 and have a son who graduated in 2017. Without question, the best decision I've made in my life was pulling my two younger children out of the Arlington school system in 2021. The reasons at that point in time were COVID related. It was like pulling teeth to get the teachers back in the buildings full time. Grade inflation, and lack of accountability. Since 2021, things have clearly gotten worse. I've had many neighbors and friends in the district tell me they should have followed us out the door. A once well-regarded school system is no more." Yeah. Well, it's every school system. And I'm shocked that more people don't leave on a regular basis, because they should. They should flatten these school districts. Because when you have people like that sitting on school boards doing things like that, it's a no-brainer. Okay. That's it for education. Let's see. Couple of quick jab things here. This was from Zero Hedge. As one might expect, of course, the jab consequences continue to occur. As the story, of course, is now being told, flu cases are through the roof. Everybody has the flu. Well, joke's on you. Flu doesn't exist. The only question you have to ask yourself is of those people who are sick, who took the COVID shots and who keeps taking shots? That's the cause of their illness. Again, from Zero Hedge, COVID vaccine myocarditis deaths, a very small price to pay, says fired FDA advisor Paul Offit. There you go. Permanent heart condition that will lead to your death within 9 years is a small price to pay for not having COVID. And yet the jabs don't prevent something that doesn't even exist. There's this one from thefocalpoints.com. Infant vaccination increases death risk by up to 112% versus the unvaccinated. Louisiana Department of Health death records reveal that infants vaccinated at 2 months are far more likely to die in the following month than unvaccinated infants. That's from Nicholas Hulsher. Again, it's been 5 years now since the official jab rollout. So, no doubt that the consequences will continue to occur here. Just understand again, when you see a headline of an individual who is remarkably young, who all of a sudden dies suddenly, or has a rare form of cancer that they should never have, the answer as to why they are ill or why they died is rather clear. I believe, one of the Kennedy granddaughters died at the age of 35 here over the Christmas break. She had whatever it was, a rare kind of leukemia. Well, she was jabbed. So it's rather obvious. But anyway, with all of that said, let me make a couple of references here real quick to my website just very fast here. You may recall that there's a couple of book companies that I have promo codes to. I don't receive any kickbacks from them. I want to make that abundantly clear. But you get percentages off if you're interested. There's the Academic Research Media Review and Education Group. If you use promo code American Education FM, you'll get 15% off of the books and materials there. Same thing with Money Tree Publishing. If you use promo code AEFM, you'll get 10% off over there. There's a third book company, which I greatly enjoy and have been utilizing here as of late. There's no promo code associated with it. It's just a great outlet, and it is Thrift Books, thriftbooks.com. There's a link to it on my website also, AmericanEducationFM.com, and they've got great books over there as well, including some hard-to-find real history books. And if you end up, again, you can buy them, of course, used at very low prices, even hardbacks at very, very low prices. And when you buy a certain amount, you, of course, get a certain number of points, and then you end up getting at least $5 off your next purchase. I ended up buying a book, I believe, for like $1.50, which was pretty awesome. So thriftbooks.com also exists over there. And again, if you're interested in checking out those other publishing companies for real history books and real materials that tell the truth, that, of course, you're not going to find in an American school, university, or library, let alone bookstore, I highly recommend it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is going to be one hell of a year. I'm certain of that. So let's hold on tight and we'll sift through it the best we can. If you're new to the show, welcome. Hope you stick around. Thanks for listening as always. I'll catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.